Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz pianist and composer Alex Brown. We talked to him about his new 2021 CD, The Dark Fire Sessions, and his life in music. He is a rising artist in the New York jazz scene and has been collaborating with his biological brother, bassist Zach Brown, and de facto brother, drummer Eric Doob, for many, many years. He's played with a lot of heavy cats in jazz and has been a member of Paquito D'Rivera's ensemble since 2007, performing and contributing arrangements to their Latin GRAMMY award-winning album, Jazz Meets the Classics. He's got great stories. Enjoy.
Hey, good, man. What's going on?
Not too much. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm good, man. Really been enjoying the album.
Thank you so much.
It really has just has a great mix of chill and just oomph, and it's a great album. I think there's a level of this that I was thinking while I was listening to this, you know, when you go see the Grand Canyon, it never really changes. I mean, it may change seasonally, and you know what you're going to get into. And I think the thing that's kind of unfortunate about jazz is that people always get pigeonholed into the old days or even the 40s and the 50s and, you know, even swing era. They don't really get to that point where they evolve up to what's going on now. And I see what you're doing which is what a lot of cats are doing now, which is a more evolved, much more integrated sound that we call jazz. I definitely appreciate it, and looking forward to delving deeper into the album. So I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate that. Thanks so much.
So let's go ahead and dive into the album here. And the Dark Fire Sessions, it's coming out, first and foremost, coming out during a pandemic. I mean, not so much when you created this, but how does it feel to be able to have music that's coming out now and you can communicate with the fans and have that possibility for live shows?
I mean, it feels great, honestly, just to get it out. I probably started working on this album in 2014. I mean, we probably recorded most of this from 2015 to 2016, but even prior to that, I had written some of these tunes. So it was just kind of like a long time coming. It just feels really great finally to be able to share it, and I hope people do like it because I really did pour my heart and soul into it, and clearly we took our time to really try to get it exactly how we wanted it to sound rather than just trying to rush it out or something like that, you know.
Ultimately, how would you define the voice that you have on this album? The kind of the amalgamation of sound. How would you define that?
Yeah, you know, I'm honestly really terrible at trying to put anything I do musically into words. I mean, you just honestly defined it much better than I could. But I think, like you said, I'm trying to figure out a way. I mean, the thing that's always appealed to me the most about jazz is just having the ability to create and draw on a really wide variety of inspirations and influences. And of course, you know, I love the classic stuff. I've spent a lot of time listening to that over the years. But, you know, like you said, I'm trying to do something that feels like relevant today. I'm trying to draw on those influences, but in a way that just makes sense to me. And, you know, a lot of this stuff, I just wrote it trying to express emotions that I didn't even necessarily think of in words. I don't know. I'm just kind of rambling here. I'm answering your question at all.
No, you're good. I guess my segue on this is going into the ensemble of artists that are on here. Your brother Zach's on it. You have a lot of other cats that are on here. How did all of that work with all of the musicians, and how do you think the conversation flowed to get this where it's at?
Definitely. Well, you know, of course, like you said, my brother, he plays bass on the album and mixed it, and, you know, pretty much every decision I made, I talked about with him as well as with Eric Doob, the drummer. The three of us are very tight, and we've been playing together for a really long time. And also Matt, he's very close with, he does a lot of stuff with Eric and Zach as well, and also Paulo. So it was kind of like this core group of musicians that it was a very collaborative process. Again, we had been playing this music, some of it for years before we recorded it, and it kind of progressed over the years into what it eventually became on the album. And then, so then we had all these other musicians that I was just kind of thinking, well, this track needs this vibe, so this person would be perfect for that, like Franco Pina and, Eric Doob joined on Chacarera. They're both, really pros at exactly what we needed to get the authentic kind of folk music experience from Argentina, as an example.
Sure. So what do you ultimately hope the listener gets from this? They download or buy it. What do you hope they get from it?
I honestly just hope that they enjoy it and that it transports them to someplace. I hope I don't have any expectations for a way someone should react to it, but I just really honestly want people to hear it because I'm very proud of it. And again, no expectations, but I just hope people give it a chance and listen to it.
So your brother's musical, obviously, and it seems like you probably grew up in a musical household. Talk to me about where exactly were you born and raised and kind of how this music became a part of your life.
Yeah, so I grew up in Columbia, Maryland. It's like a suburb right between D.C. and Baltimore. My parents are not musicians, but they love music, particularly classical music and jazz, and they were always taking us to see the Baltimore Symphony when we were growing up and encouraged us to take music lessons. And also we all went to a very good public school system that had a lot of music and arts education as part of the schools. So we all played in orchestra, in band. I joined the jazz band in middle school, which is really what prompted me to want to get more into the music. I remember our band director in 6th grade put on this Maynard Ferguson record, which at the time just like blew my mind. I immediately went to the mall as soon as I could to Sam Goody, remember that place, and bought the album. And that was kind of when I first got hooked on jazz. Also, my parents used to play some of the Louis Armstrong, Ella duets around the house. So that was another like early album that I remember loving in that world. So
Then let's graduate from that first album and go into the live realm. What was the first live jazz show that did kind of the same thing that Maynard did?
I certainly remember seeing Chick Corea in high school, which he's one of my, probably maybe my most, the most influential musician to me. Just the depth of his, aside from how such an amazing pianist, and just the depth of his compositions to me has just always blown my mind, and how year after year he just came up with something completely new and innovative for his entire career. So that was definitely one of them for sure. I think I saw him with his electric band the first time I saw him.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I actually caught him here in Kansas City. He played with the symphony, and the conductor was waving him to stop, and he didn't. And that was my first real taste of a jazz musician. And I don't know if he was just being him, but he was not taking directions from her, and he was doing whatever he wanted to do. And it was cool. The crowd was, symphony crowd's pretty stiff, and they were laughing, and it was pretty cool, for sure.
Was this his concerto, or?
This was back in the late 90s. It was before I really got into it, but I just knew a good friend of mine was kind of baptizing me. He was the one that introduced me to Kind of Blue by Miles Davis and Coltrane and all those cats. So he was like, man, we got to catch this guy. It's very rare. So I don't know what he was playing, but man, he was a centerpiece of that evening's entertainment for sure.
Wow. That's so cool.
So, yeah, and I think the conductor was probably used to, anybody that would play taking a side seat, but it's Chick Corea, he's going to do what he wants to do.
Funny you mentioned that because, I played in Paquito D'Rivera's band for the last 14 years, and we've done a lot of stuff with orchestras, and the really great conductors, they know when they're working with jazz musicians to follow the band, the band. And I guess that's true with a classical soloist too, they don't tell Van Cliburn how to play.
Right. And I think that was his point. I kind of got the feeling that he was like, you're going to come into my world for a little while, we're going to ride,
Right.
So, but, you mentioned, some names that you've played with. You've had quite a list of cats, from Christian McBride to Warren Wolf, up and down. What have you learned from them, whether from direct teachings or by osmosis or just being in the band, that has made you a stronger musician?
So many things. And I was lucky to, like I said, where I grew up, I started playing in high school with a lot of musicians, kind of in the U Street jazz scene, which is the street in DC that has a history of jazz over the years. It's the area where Duke Ellington is from. But yeah, I mean, some great lessons. One really important lesson that I kind of learned from Paquito is like, I'm very much a perfectionist, and it's very easy for me to, especially in the studio, start getting very obsessive. And I did get obsessive with this album for sure. At a certain point, you kind of have to let go, because it's easy to, at least for me, to like kind of beat yourself up and be overly hard. It's easy for me to be overly hard on myself. And if you're in the studio, that's terrible energy, because it's one thing that you played. It's just a snapshot. You can't make it everything into one. You can't put everything into one take, and it's not healthy to worry about it. So that's one lesson I learned with Paquito. There was a time actually on my older record where the melody wasn't played correctly on any take, and I wanted to go back and fix it or something. And he kind of was like, this is the other extreme, so I wouldn't go this far, but he laughed. He's like, "Coño, you wrote it, just change the paper."
Yeah.
So.
Well, and those are the kinds of things that stick with you for the rest of your life. You know, and you've been around for quite a while, and I'm curious, if you had a dream tonight and you could run into your younger self and give your younger self one piece of advice based on what you've learned throughout all these years of playing and recording, what would that piece of advice be? And this isn't a regret question. This is like, what have you gained as far as wisdom that you would give your younger self?
It would be relax. Yeah. I mean, I think I've always worried so much about how I'm presenting myself to others and what they think of me and my playing. So, and it's kind of like what I was just saying. Stop worrying about that. Don't worry about what others think. Do what you believe in, put that out there. And if you do, and you do it with integrity, someone's going to appreciate it.
I think that's the thing that I've always respected about jazz musicians is, I mean, and it kind of goes back to a lot of interviews that I had during the pandemic. It seemed as though the art form that mimicked what we were living through the most was jazz. You're thrown into a situation that's unknown, that you have no idea how it's going to turn out, and you have to make something good out of it. And that's what you do all the time when you get on stage, you know,
right,
for better or for worse. And a lot of untrained listeners out there would have no idea that a note would be hit a certain way that would be undesirable. So it seems to us as though that's why you're the cool cats.
No, for sure. That's a good point. It's just kind of funny how sometimes you think you're having a really great night, and then the next night you try to recreate that, and that never works, because it's all about being in the moment, you know?
Well, yeah, there can only be one first date. No matter how hard you try, you're never going to recreate it.
Right.
So, you know, every day you get to wake up and you get to create music, and you're a jazz musician. What's the greatest thing about being a professional musician for you?
I mean, there's so many great things about it, but I think it's just the ability I just feel very lucky to have the, ability to create and express myself. And if I feel like sitting down and writing a piece of music, I can do that. And I think kind of like what you're talking about with the pandemic, I mean, I think we're lucky now to have so many tools. It's kind of like there are pros and cons of the way that so much technology has become available to everyone. But I think a lot of the pros outweigh the cons. Just having the ability to create your own music on your computer is pretty amazing, But so many other great things about it, too. I mean, the people getting to travel all over the world, just meet other artists and creative people, and just people in general. I mean, it's a great way to connect. There have been times where I was traveling and I didn't know anyone, and you show up at a jam session and you instantly have friends.
Well, I guess playing off of the pandemic principle, too, this was quite a long time that we were in lockdown and quarantine, and it seems like things are kind of waking up a little bit more again. We thought it was happening in June. But my question to you is this. Everyone had that moment to really be self-reflective. What did you learn about yourself that maybe you didn't realize before that's going to make you stronger as you reemerge to the stage and the studio in your life outside?
I learned a lot of things. I'm trying to decide which I should share with you. I definitely have a different perspective on playing now, playing jazz and playing gigs in general, because I think it's a little easy to get jaded as a jazz musician this day and age, at least for me. Sometimes I would think to myself, why am I doing this? And it's now the gigs that I've had, the past few months have kind of been really the closest thing to normal in terms of playing in public since before the pandemic. And it's just a different perspective on it, kind of like what I was saying earlier about relaxing. Like, I can have more fun with it now. In a way, I don't take it as seriously. I don't mean that I don't take it as seriously, but I'm not as worried about it when I'm doing it. So I think it kind of makes it better, actually, you know?
I feel that now as a listener. There was always that moment where, I always, before the pandemic, would take a deep breath knowing that, I was in there to review this show, and I was just happy and fortunate to be able to be in there. And there's a different perspective, I think, collectively. It's like, I don't know that our generations have gone through anything like this. And I keep thinking about that lately, about like the World War II generations. When I was a kid, the Challenger exploded, and it was this episodic thing that kind of went away. And I mean, it never really went away, but it was just this moment. Or there was 9/11, and that was a bigger moment. But this is like what we could say the World War II generation went through, where they had to read the papers for years and years and years almost, and have this back and forth. You never knew when things were going to return, if people were going to die. There's just a lot of that, I think, that is a part of living through COVID right now. And I think that everybody's perspective, wherever we go in the world, is going to be permanently altered in a way that hopefully we make things better. Like you said, for musicians, you've picked up so many additional tools, so many new things. There has to be a lot of positives that are going to come out.
Absolutely.
So my final question to you is this. Everyone has a perception. Your family, your friends, your fans, but you are the one living your life. Who do you think you are?
You're asking me the hardest questions, man.
Sorry.
Who do I think I am? I don't know really how to answer that. I'm just a guy trying my best to make it through life, I guess. Trying to find what makes me happy, trying to do something meaningful. And I guess that's really it. Trying to be a good person,
Alex, thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz to talk about this wonderful album, The Dark Fire Sessions, and good luck with everything.
Thank you so much, Joe. It's a pleasure speaking with you. Thanks so much for playing the album.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Alex for his time, music, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.